I'm going to give you a protected area perspective on concession management and what it's like to be a concession staff person working in that protected area, training and working with staff who are issuing concessions every day of their working lives. And that's the perspective I'm going to bring. Despite all the advances that we keep hearing about at this particular conference in terms of the progress that we've made on protecting natural areas and protecting biodiversity, I'm a firm believer that we still have a long, long way to go. And I'm actually not happy with the Archie targets of 17% of our countries protected. I'd like to see us go much further. So this presentation, in a way, is about mainstreaming conservation and how we work with our partners to get there and do that. And again, I'm also a firm believer that rangers and protected area agencies just cannot do this work on their own. They have to work with the private sector. And one of the best private sector areas to work in is the concession area, because we've got operators already out there. They already care and are in the parks on a daily basis. And who better who better private sector organisation to work with than some of those? Now you might ask why we're having a concessions presentation, and there's a picture of a baby kiwi up on the slideshow there. The simple reason is concessions can produce many, sorry, I'm walking away from the buzzing on the speakers. Concessionaires can produce many benefits, and one of those benefits is direct conservation work. This kiwi was born in the wild, but because of our threats to biodiversity in New Zealand, it got removed, the egg got removed from the nest when it was still obviously an egg. It got taken to one of our largest concessionaires, Ngāi Tahu Tourism, who run an operation and raise over 100 of these eggs into chicks. And the chicks are re-released back into the wild once they reach 1.2 kgs in weight. And when they reach 1.2 kgs in weight, they can fight off the introduced pests that we have in New Zealand, so possums and stoats and cats. An adult kiwi of 1.2 kgs in weight can fight them off. Now, they don't just do that out of the kindness of their heart. That operation, where they raise over 100 eggs per annum, is actually also a tourism operation that has been built around that to interpret that to visitors. So is it conservation? Is it tourism? Actually, it doesn't matter, because conservation is a real winner. Okay, here's another picture of our Hollyford Valley in the South Island of New Zealand. There's a wonderful Department of Conservation managed walking track running down the river there and out to the lake on your left-hand side, and then it runs out to the sea. It's a 4-day walk with 5 lovely huts on it that you can stay in as a freedom walker. The fees are very modest, and it's open to everyone via a booking system. But one of the things that makes this track really work is the fact that we have a commercial operator working with us alongside it. And they have a number of upmarket lodges along the track. And so we get the benefit of providing one product to a number of market segments. We get the benefit of making sure that facilities are well utilised, because they are expensive to maintain. And we get the revenue back from it. But one of the other important benefits that we get is the marketing that the commercial operator brings to this area, and that really helps our visitor numbers out as well. A lot of people think concessions is really small business, but can I have a show of hands of who's here from a protected area agency that works in concessions? Is there many people here? Good, there's a few. So those of you who are decision makers or work in the field will know that it occupies a significant portion of protected area time to manage, process, allocate and monitor concession work. In some countries it's worth millions of dollars, involving hundreds of staff and thousands of contracts with commercial operators. In other countries, and you'll hear from Colga later, it may only be a few concessions, but one job in a rural area can sometimes support up to 5 or 6 people. And that's 5 or 6 people that are supported through their livelihoods and hopefully are no longer a threat to the protected area. In fact, they're gaining benefits from a protected area. So even one concession and one job is worthwhile. In my experience, this is a list of some of the benefits that can come from concession management in protected areas. And I'm sure you can think of many more. What I've seen as I've worked in different places is that protected area agencies often focus on those top 4 benefits. So they focus on, obviously, income, visitor facilities, impact management, and sometimes they go as far as looking at the economic benefits. But there's a whole lot of more realisable benefits that come from concessions. One of the downsides that I do see in protected area networks is that they haven't actually stated what benefits they want from their concession system. And they haven't designed their concession system to achieve those benefits. And they're the outcomes. Those are the outcomes we want. So it's not about how many concessions you processed this month. It's all about the benefits and outcomes that you can get from concessions. Now, it's really easy to create one good concession. Every protected area can create one good concession, particularly if you've got a really good operator. But your job is to create hundreds of good concessions that deliver all of these benefits all of the time. Now, you'll never get it right 100% of the time. There's always the odd stuff up. That's life. But if you can have a system that produces these benefits on a regular, ongoing basis, that's what you're after. Sorry, and I just want to emphasise that these elements apply to no matter what law or what legislation or what regulations apply in a particular country, whether it's the US or whether you're selling yak yogurt in China in a protected area, whether you're managing gers in Mongolia or Makoro trips in Botswana, all of these elements should be present in any protected area concession system. So the first of those key elements is principles of good process. No matter what type of allocation mechanism you're running, you need some good principles of good process. And we all know what some of these are. Obviously, the concession area is one area where there might be the potential for corruption in some countries. That's just, the moment that happens, you might as well throw your concession system away. You'll lose credibility from every particular direction. You need clear stated processes, clear criteria that everyone understands. Natural justice principles apply, and conflicts of interest need to be removed. I've had the unfortunate experience of having to investigate some of my own colleagues who held concessions, who formerly held concessions and also worked for the Department of Conservation. Following those investigations, they had to choose whether they wanted to remain with the Department of Conservation or whether they wanted to continue to hold those concessions. These principles apply whether you're allocating government fisheries quota or concessions. It actually doesn't matter. The second key element is to think about a concession system or a concession function from a systems perspective. There's a number of components to any good system, and these are a few of them. And the most overlooked component of an entire system is our staff. Have we got the capacity? Have we got the capability to do this work? What are our training methods? What are our induction methods? And how do we retain good staff when we get them? These are all really important things that need to be considered. Staff are often overlooked, but you can cope with a lot of other components missing if you've got good staff. The third key element is to think about, thanks for the reminder, the third key element is to think about concessions work as three clear components, and there does need to be a little bit of separation between these kind of work areas. The first is plan. What concessions and what commercial services do you want that will complement the services that the park agency is providing? And how do you integrate those into your biodiversity outcomes? You know, concessions work does have to be integrated with the biodiversity outcomes that you should be trying to achieve. In fact, my argument for the criteria, we had a great standards discussion earlier, is will the park be better off with that concession or not? Will biodiversity be better off with that concession or not? The answer should be yes. It should be symbiotic. And then we allocate the concessions. Now, we might use an auction or a tender or accept an application or do a direct award to a local community. The mechanism, we should have the flexibility to use the mechanism that gives us the best result. But we should not get confused between our planning and our allocation, and there's often a temptation to do that. Monitoring is obvious, whether it's monitoring the economic impacts or actually monitoring the impacts of an operation in the field directly. It is absolutely vital to see whether we're achieving those benefits that we're setting out right at the beginning of the process that I went through just before. And the fourth element that I always look for And this is, on one hand, this is quite obvious. This is what I call the concession lifecycle, where we plan what we're going to do, we get an application, we go through a sort of consideration process of a concession, and then we make a decision, and then we move into a management mode of the concession. And often we don't actually think about the expiry process of that concession. You know, it might be 5 years away, it might even be 20 or 30 years away. But sometimes we have to look at the way we're managing that industry collectively in our park. We may have overstepped in terms of allocating too much commercial rights, and we may need to bring that back in the future. But there's a subtle message I just want to talk about in this, and that is when we're in the application or tender process, we're in a highly competitive and very sensitive, commercially sensitive process. And we've got to respect a lot of intellectual property and commercial rights in that process. So we have to, as protected area agencies, we have to have the skills and tread quite carefully in there. When we're assessing and in decision making, we're in a regulatory style modus of operandi. So we're being very regulatory. It's kind of like, yeah, we might allow you to operate, we might not allow you to operate, and we're in that mode. Once the decision's made to approve that concession, we really need to move into a partnership mode with that operator. And this is the transition that I often see that protected area staff and concession staff don't make this transition to work with their operators. They either stay in the regulatory mode or in the commercially sensitive mode and fail to make that adjustment and move into a partnership mode and look at the opportunities, the mutual benefits that working together can bring. And finally, just in conclusion, I'm just bringing you back to those benefits. And I'd just ask you to think about the concessions you've been involved in, the protected areas you've been involved in. Have you got the right, are your goals clear? Do you know what benefits you're trying to achieve? Is your system over-engineered or under-engineered? Are there gaps? Have you got the right balance between planning, allocation, and monitoring? I've often found that we fail poorly at the monitoring side of things. And I would just ask you to continually look outside in concession work. There's lots of protected areas working in this area. We're all learning the same kind of lessons, and some agencies have made some magnificent progress, and it's worth stealing their good ideas. Thank you very much, everyone.